Hey, everybody. Welcome to the TEConnect podcast. I'm John Martin.
And I'm Dean Reverman.
Dean, we got a pretty special episode today.
We do.
We're talking to a panel of RFID experts.
And we're live.
We're exploring trends. We're talking new features.
That's right.
We have opportunities for VARs to sell the technology.
Yes.
What are some entry-level applications? What are use cases in warehousing and retail? Now, these are actually all topics that were submitted by our live viewers.
There
today.
you go.
When they registered to sign up to watch this, I asked, hey, what do you guys want to hear about? Collated some of those topics together into some talking points for our panel here. So I think we're going to hopefully touch on a lot of stuff that everyone wants to hear.
Can I make a bold claim?
Yes, you may.
Besides AI, RFID is like the hottest topic right now.
You know what? I have to agree with you.
Like everybody wants to know, what are the opportunities? How do I get in? All that kind of good stuff. So this is going to be a good one.
There you go. And we'll give these folks an opportunity to ask questions at the end as well.
Yes.
So
very good.
All that plus our usual value to the VAR. Actually, that's where we're going to let you ask the questions because what's better VAR value than you asking the questions that you care about? If we have some time, we'll do some What's Tech Connecting with you. It's time to plug in and get connected.
Welcome to the TEConnect podcast. It's time to get connected.
As I mentioned, we've got, first of all, I want to say a big thanks to Zebra. They are sponsoring this live stream today. And speaking of Zebra, well, BlueStar and Zebra have combed through your sales history.
Yes.
We wanted to do that to put together a custom refresh reports to help you find opportunities to upgrade outdated tech, unsupported OS, and devices with new, better features. Now, what can you expect in that refresh report? Well, you can get historical sales data
There you
from
go.
2015 to 2022. That's
Nice.
good information
That's
there.
great info.
Opportunities like converting 2G and 3G devices to LTE enabled, EOL Windows to Android, and upgrading existing customers to the latest RFID solutions from Zebra.
Bingo.
Since we're talking RFID today.
Hey.
Don't let your competition have these conversations before you do. Request your Zebra refresh report. Check your follow-up email tomorrow to get a link with more information about how to get your report. And if you're not watching the episode live, you're checking out later on the podcast feed, go down to the show notes. You'll find a link to request that report there.
Nice.
All right, hey, let's get into it. Let's start off by introducing this awesome panel that we've got because they're going to do most of the talking today. Dean and I,
That's right.
We're going to sit back and
Well, like I said, we've got a great panel of experts here. I don't really have a lot to say on RFID that these guys can't fill in.
Exactly. Yeah. All right. So let's get into it. First of all, our panel here is Eric Malmed. He is the Senior Manager of Product Management for RFID Readers and ALT with Zebra. Eric, welcome to the show. I have one simple question for you to kick this off. Is this the year of RFID?
Yeah, that's a tough one. I think it is. In fact, I think actually last year was probably the year of RFID as well. It's been the year of RFID every year since I've been with Zebra for the past 9 years. So hoping this is an even bigger year of RFID.
There you go.
Exactly. That's been our joke with us too. But we feel like
that's why we asked
a
the
little
question.
more.
Oh,
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. Next up, we've got Steve Weiss. He is the Director of RFID for DecisionPoint. Steve, welcome to the show. Same question for you. Do you think this is the year of RFID?
Yeah, I'll take Eric's answer. I think every year is the year of RFID. It's accelerated in the last right before COVID. We really saw the acceleration occur, and then a lot of things learned through the COVID experience in warehouse, and it's really generated a lot of interest in RFID subsequently.
Nice.
There you go. Good
Agree.
answer. All right, and finally, our last guest today is Archit. He is the VP of Strategic Accounts for RFID for you. So we've got the vendor side,
There we
got
go.
the reseller side, we've got the software
side. Love it.
Archit, same question for you. Year of RFID, do you agree with the other guys?
It's every day, every minute, every hour, from RFID for years. So it's all the time. And as the gentleman before me just mentioned, what we're seeing is the trend is it's only going up, right? That's the way that things are going. This year as an industry, I think we're targeting for UHF/RAIN RFID 60 billion chips on net new products. 2 years ago, that was 30 billion. So I don't know any other industry that's doubling in 2 years in terms of net new product that have RFID on it. So it's only one direction, and that's up. And I think everyone on the call's equally as excited as I am in terms of how things are progressing.
There you go. Love it. All right. Well,
Love
we've
the
got an
data.
excited panel
Yep.
that believes it's the year, and then it's always
Always
the
the
time of RFID. So let's get into this, and let's talk some of these questions here. And like I said, these are all based around questions and talking points that our registrants said that they wanted to hear about in this particular conversation. So let's kick it off. And Eric, I'll let you start here. So give us, one trend, one innovation, one new feature that you think is really impacting the RFID market right now, or how we go to market and where we can find new opportunities.
Yeah, so from a market perspective, retail is really moving towards what we call loss detection, and that's away from loss prevention and towards loss detection. It's really understanding what is going out the door, what we're missing on the sales floor, so that we can make sure that we have it in stock, so that our customers can, or our customers' customers can actually purchase the product so that they can generate revenue. From a technology side, I'm actually seeing an increase in the need for cellular or 5G capabilities built into devices, as well as short-range RFID. We see that the market is really proliferating, and it's starting out at handheld opportunities, and then it's moving more towards fixed RFID and more toward automation type use cases. And as RFID proliferates into the market, we believe that there's going to be a shift from needing standard range RFID handhelds to more short range RFID, because we're going to be getting those automated reads from the fixed read points anyway. So we're going to need short range RFID for handheld exception type use cases. And that's kind of where we're seeing the market and the opportunities move in RFID.
All right, Steve, Archit, anything to add there?
Yeah, this is Steve. I'll take a shot at it. So I see a lot of times now RFID is being integrated with additional technologies to provide solutions. So the general trend is we want to watch everything with different technologies. We want to use BLE, cameras, GPS if enabled, IoT devices. We want to communicate in remote places with LTE. So solutions now are really being combined, RFID solutions with other technologies to provide for more use cases and better data. As that data is collected and correlated with events and timeframes and put into a data lake, we're seeing AI now operate on the data lake to provide insights, hidden meetings, trends, and those kinds of things that can be very impactful for business.
Great. Archit, what about you? Any kind of particular trends or features you're paying attention to?
Yeah, one thing that I would say, right, if we look at the traditional life cycle of any RFID project, I think it's always good to talk about the easy things, but one of the hardest things always is that initial tagging step, right? Where if you have an RFID project, you have to have an RFID label or tag onto the product to be able to leverage the technology. One of the trends that we're seeing now is that there is a mass growth of opportunities out there where products already have RFID tags on them, or products are having RFID tags on them in an earlier part of their life cycle. So with this, trend of having products pre-labeled or pre-tagged, we're seeing a huge new group of opportunities coming out there where people can read these RFID tags at different points in supply chains, the life cycle of the specific products. And for folks that are, looking at opportunities for RFID, these are new areas where, for example, RFID hardware can basically be able to be put in as well. So there's lots of new opportunities that are being developed just based on, the abundance of how many RFID tags are out there and how early in the stage these tags are being put onto the products themselves.
Let's dig in a little bit there. We all know about the Walmart, thing, and that prerequisite and things of that nature. Is that seems to have a little bit of an effect here, and maybe it's manifesting, Archit, in what you just said, that obviously tagging is starting to happen and be pervasive in a lot of different areas. Where are we seeing that? Are you seeing that just in retail? Are you seeing it in some other industries? Archit, maybe start off there. Is it primarily retail?
Retail is obviously, retail is definitely one that's driving a lot of those initiatives, right? And the reason for that is, as a retailer, it's a lot easier to have your products be tagged in manufacturing just because it reduces the labor cost. It allows you to start taking advantage of the technology the second it hits your supply chain. But now, given these lessons learned by a lot of retailers, we're seeing a lot of industries where you're seeing healthcare, where a lot of medical device products are being pre-tagged before they're shipped to a hospital, so that way a hospital can use it for their own inventory management. We're seeing a lot of consumer products or products that are being in a B2B environment have an RFID tag attached onto it already. So if someone wants to use it as part of their operations, it's kind of pre-tagged and ready to use. You know, a great example of that is one of the leading providers of servers and switches that's out there. You know, they're putting RFID tags on them, on their products before they ship it out to their customers. It's the customer's choice if they want to use that RFID tag or not, but they don't have to go through the effort now of attaching an RFID tag onto that server or switch if they want to track it in their data centers, if they want to track it in their retail stores or in their restaurants or anywhere else. So there's just this huge trend of products that have RFID tags, you know, being put on a lot earlier, and that just saves labor, but it also allows you to start tracking products a lot earlier on in the cycle.
This is Steve. I'd like to camp on to that and say, you know, retail really drove the adoption of RFID back through the supply chain. Slap and ship, you know, made it a distribution function, and then obviously it started thinking about, well, how could we use this? And the recognition that the earlier you get a tag on something, the more value it provides. So now it's all about supply chain visibility rather than just retail or distribution or manufacturing. They're all coming together and sharing data across the supply chain, and that's really a new trend.
Yeah, and I'll echo what Steve said. Oh, sorry, I'll echo what Steve said. You know, a lot of RFID adoption was driven by retail, and I think Archit said that as well. We're seeing exactly what Steve said. Retailers that started out with using a handheld for inventory, moving towards fixed readers, maybe even at point of sale, now moving to utilize the RFID technology further up in the supply chain. So, you know, typically RFID manufacturers from a hardware side were focused on device level, store level devices, and now we're having to refocus our efforts on devices that are built for, you know, ruggedness, for the warehouse, for supply chain, for even for manufacturing. So it's a shift in focus, not only from the retailer's perspective, but also from the manufacturer's perspective as well.
Eric, that's why you're saying short range is starting to see a run here. Is that where you're going with part of that?
I think so. I think short range also has a play in, we have product that goes out the door and people bring it back, and we're using RFID at the point of sale in some instances to ring customers up. We see it in sports venues, we see it in some retailers out there, and bring that item back and returning it at the store. We can use that RFID for returns authentication, for speeding up the returns process. So I think there are other use cases that are being generated by having RFID tagged product that short range is a valid and up and coming use case. Yeah.
And before we move on, Steve, kind of getting back to your point about just the demands to see visibility, supply chain visibility, that's driving a lot of this, right? And maybe that's part of your commentary why there's a need for pairing up with some other technologies as well, be it machine or, you know, vision and camera technology, or good old traditional barcode technology, right? Pairing up with that, but it's kind of that demand, that supply chain visibility, getting back to your point, right?
It is, exactly. And a couple of other trends there, and Eric mentioned one is, you know, it used to be the day and age of the mobile worker, and if you will, giving the mobile worker tools. And the trend now is automated read points and fixed read infrastructures. And a lot of that was from, you know, in warehouse and in manufacturing to, you know, it's harder to get workers, harder to keep them trained. And there's a lot of other adjacent technologies, automations now, conveyors, other types of movements. So RFID is a trigger for automation now, and you're seeing that done through fixed read infrastructure. And also, if you think about the Zebra FXR90, it kind of goes to both. It's a fixed reader, it's rugged, like Eric said, but it's also being able to do BLE, GPS. It can integrate with some sensors. It uses LTE to communicate. So you're seeing a fixed reader now integrated with other technologies to effectively trigger some of these automations.
Got it.
Well, so let's talk about what pretty much I think everyone here is interested in, which is out finding and winning business. like, hey, I want to go sell some of this RFID stuff. And I know a lot of our VAR partners are themselves, they're small to mid-sized businesses, or they may cater to SMB markets. So when you think about a lot of the questions I got when people were registering were, hey, I want to understand, some recommendations, some best practices for entry-level RFID. What's some places to start? What are cost-effective solutions? What's something I can quickly go out and win some business to kind of get myself started as an RFID expert? So Steve, why don't you kick us off there? What do you think is some good entry-level cost-effective places to start some RFID practices?
Yeah. Let me mention some of the practices that I always go through first. First, become a process expert. Understand the life cycle process of whatever it is you're going to track. What I mean is, what is the material? What's its shape? What's its size? Where does it go? Who actually moves it? How is it moved? What computer system interfaces? What people are involved? All of that is a good common understanding. You want to probably start smaller. You want to make sure it's a win. You want to make sure that you're effectively getting to understand the technology. You want to make sure that it's on a high impact area. You want to do something that's really not going to return a lot of ROI. So start small, get a high impact area. One thing you need to do is choose the right integrator. There's a lot of great ones out there. Obviously at DecisionPoint, we're a great integrator. The integrator is really going to help guide you in understanding the readers, the tags, the placements, the sensitivities, how you're going to come up with a solution approach. Obviously, you want to make sure that you can scale this and extend it. I would recommend you consider a small integration with your existing ERP or warehouse management. You couldn't do standalone, but 90% of our implementations integrate. And then the other thing is make sure you have the right stakeholders, train and educate your staff. And that's probably good. I will mention one use case before I leave another best practice. I want to make sure that you monitor the performance and get some data on the ROI. So don't just implement it, measure it. That said, I'll mention one use case that I think is really a value. It's a dock door validation, ship or receive. And that's in warehouse, obviously, but in other areas in manufacturing when they're shipping product out or when you're receiving it at retail. So we want to make sure we're getting the right product on the right truck to the right customer.
I like it. Archit, what about you? Any recommendations of best practices, place to start?
Yeah, definitely. One of the things that I'm a strong believer of, and I believe a lot of folks in the RFID industry as well, is that it's best to start small and scale up. Right, and there's certain use cases that I like to call as layups in RFID, and there's certain use cases which have business value. They might be like your 3-pointer or your half-court shot. Obviously, a 3-pointer is worth a couple more points, but you're gonna work a little bit harder to get there, right? So when we're looking at these use cases of RFID, I always recommend, especially if you're looking at addressing the market, go for those easy use cases. And one that comes to mind is asset tracking. The reason is every organization out there has assets. It doesn't matter how small they are or how big they are. And those assets can be things like IT assets, they can be tools, they can be assets that you use in a manufacturing facility, containers that are going in and out of a location. So lots of little things, but everyone wants to keep track of them. And with the growth in RFID, there's been a lot of R&D that's happened in terms of, what are the best RFID tags for each of those asset types. A lot of that R&D has been done. There's a lot of off-the-shelf options. So it's almost, I don't want to say it's a cookie cutter application, but there's a lot of work that's been done to define what's going to work well for certain use cases. And that's an application I always recommend folks to look out for because it's something that everyone has and it's an easy ROI. And the reason why it's an easy ROI is when we're looking at a solution, right? One of the easiest time savings is when folks spend time auditing their assets, and most organizations do this at least on an annual basis. Most government organizations, once a year, they'll walk into a facility with a barcode scanner or a clipboard in some cases and jot down what they have because they got to report back on it. With RFID, they can walk into a facility with an RFID handheld. Zebra's got some great products like the RFD 40, RFD 90. Walk in, couple seconds, you're done with a specific location, and you got a really quick visibility on it. So I'm a big believer, look at those easy use cases. When you start getting the confidence in those easy use cases, then with that specific customer, you can start looking at, what are those more difficult ones? Those other ones might have a better ROI, they might be more impact. But if you kind of get your toes wet a little bit, you can definitely gain the confidence to implement it, gain the customer's confidence, and then have the customer understand the benefits of the technology as you move forward towards that application.
That's a good one.
Yeah. Eric, what about you? What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I want to echo something that Steve said. I think choosing the right integrator or software provider is paramount when you're looking at an RFID solution. Someone to guide you through the process and make sure that even RFID is the right technology for you to solve this problem. We get a lot of customers that come in and say, oh, I want RFID. And it's like, hold on a second. What's the business problem that you're trying to solve? Let's look at all the options that are on the table and make sure that RFID is the one that's going to be able to solve your problem at the highest ROI. And traditionally, it has been that case. But you have to consider other technologies, like Steve mentioned before, with BLE, with even active RFID, other types of technologies. The one thing I want to just reiterate is that entry level doesn't necessarily mean value tier. So having the right products that perform properly, that are designed to work in an ecosystem is very, very important, as well as, like I said, choosing the right integrator. The one thing I'll caution and suggest that people look at when they're first going to implement an RFID system is to choose the proper data standard and to choose the proper way to encode a tag. So encoding a tag is typically the first step, and making sure the data is correct is paramount, because if you don't have the proper data on the tag, the data that you're going to read is just garbage. So what I would suggest is using a printer or pre-encoded, pre-printed tags for tagging up, like Archit mentioned. And then to echo on something that Archit said, the crawl, walk, run approach is sincerely the best way to do this. Don't think that you're going to go roll out a 500 store chain overnight. You've got to do a pilot and then move on from there. For a use case perspective, I believe that, and what I'm seeing in the market today is that RTI, or returnable transport items, like plastic pallets, totes, and again, asset tracking, because these are all assets, is really one of the quickest ROIs that I'm seeing in the market today, and really easy to get leadership buy-in from a customer's perspective.
Yeah, brilliant. I mean, we have use cases of like rental houses, right?
Mm-hmm.
If there was one that had like a rental house for industrial gear,
Mm-hmm.
and you were talking big cables and stuff like that. And to Archit's point, I think they were doing an inventory like on a weekly basis, right? So a little bit more than annually, but this rental house needs to know what do we have
Right.
here.
It's a lot of time and
There's
resources.
a lot of
to put
time.
to that,
So that's an asset tagging type of solution implemented, made their lives so much easier and so much more accurate, rather than walking around with the good old clipboard that we always talk about. Hey guys, I know that RFID is a complex sale, right? I mean, and that's one of the barriers to entry, is the fact that it's not just the readers, it's not just the antennas, it's the tags, and the tags themselves are very complicated. So my question is, where would you recommend a reseller, like, where do they start educating themselves on? Should they start at the tags? Should they start at the hardware? Should they start even higher and just, what the technology is all about? I don't know, Steve, do you have a comment here? Like, where do you recommend they start their education process, just to kind of know? Because again, it is complex, right?
No, it's a great point. So I would start with your integrators and manufacturers. Integrators first. And so for example, at DecisionPoint, we have a 20 questions to ask and answer before you implement RFID guide. And many of your integrators also have guides and suggestions on how to be successful, where to start, making sure you have the right stakeholders, make sure you have your KPIs lined up, all the things that really set up for a win. And that's the big thing, is you want to get a win. You want to have the technology accepted, make sure you get an ROI, but the manufacturers can also help. They can help guide you with regard to integrators that are proven, that have software platforms that are already validated and certified to work with advanced technologies, that the integrator that you're using has trained staff, and that their software platform is compatible with the products. So those are the places to start. I often say that the air interface protocol describes the science of RFID. But the art is really in knowing what antennas, what readers, what placements, what tags, what sensitivity, gaining isolation. Reading a tag isn't really the problem anymore. Gaining isolation of that object to a location is really more the challenge.
Good stuff.
Yeah, gotcha.
So let's talk about some specific use cases here. You guys have kind of mentioned a little bit, here and there about some different situations and areas where, we definitely might want to use RFID. But, again, our listeners specifically were asking like, hey, I want to understand more about where I can find a use case in warehousing and inventory management. To me, it seems like a little bit of a no-brainer, but I think these guys have some very specific, obvious ones, and as well as retail too. So maybe we'll combine these together here, and if you want to answer either of those. So Archit, I'll let you start here. Give us some specific use case when a situation where RFID really came through for warehousing, that inventory management piece, or for retail. Maybe give us a little details about like a challenge that it might have solved, what the solution entailed, just to kind of give people an understanding of like what it looks like to put together an RFID solution to solve someone's particular problem.
Yeah, definitely. So when we're looking at like a warehouse environment or distribution center environment, there's several use cases where RFID has been proven out for. But as kind of the trend of this, podcast, as we're talking about, there's certain ones that have a much quicker ROI and certain ones that are easier to implement, as well as are repeatable in nature. So one of the ones that we always love that we see that are pretty valuable, one is just doing shipment verification at the dock door inside a warehouse or distribution center. So the value prop for something like this is that a customer might have pallets or cases on a pallet where they want to be able to ensure that what's going in a specific facility or leaving a specific facility is accounted for. And by putting up RFID readers or portals at the dock door, you can quickly scan and validate this. Many organizations with the traditional technology might be barcode scanning each individual one. They might be going through a process of having individuals verify it, and it's pretty time consuming and it's pretty error prone, right? If you ship the wrong item to the wrong location, it can cost a lot of money to get it reshipped or to kind of even satisfy that customer and to appease that customer when something went to the wrong location. So that's one that we see being a huge winner. Many organizations are doing this, especially now that products are already tagged and they're starting to go down in this process. A second one, I'm gonna cheat a little bit and go for a second use case as well, is just cycle counting in the warehouse. And there's lots of ways to get this done depending on the size of the warehouse. You can use RFID handhelds, you can use RFID readers that are mounted onto forklifts itself. But the value behind this is it's kind of replicating what's being done in these retail stores, in these hospitals, in these environments. But most organizations spend a lot of time and money cycle counting their inventory inside some of these large facilities. And with RFID, it's a no-brainer. You're looking at a throughput of a couple hundred items per second. So you can zip up and down aisles and have a very strong visibility in terms of what's currently sitting in your warehouse. And what that allows you to recognize is the deltas, right? Most people want to know what are the differences between what I'm expecting to have and what I actually have, because those are where the mistakes really lie, right? Those are where you either receive something and forgot to note it down, or when you ship something out and it was the wrong item. And finding those deltas, if you're able to recognize those very quickly, more often, you can do that error correction, you can do that course correction. And a lot of businesses find value in that because they know they're doing a good job of the big stuff, right? But it's those small errors that cost time. And identifying those errors is hard. And RFID is a great way to identify that, whether that be at the dock door, whether that be for cycle counting. And with the growth of RFID tagged items, as I was mentioning earlier, we're seeing that many folks can start doing this at different points of their supply chain a lot easier because things are already tagged and they're just going ahead and verifying, using tagged products and just, going through with this flow. And even a lot of the suppliers to Walmart or Dick's Sporting Goods or Nordstrom's or Macy's that are being asked to put RFID are seeing this as a value add as well, because these retailers aren't asking them to do it, but if they do leverage the technology, they're making their money back on that investment right away.
Mm-hmm.
I like it.
Good.
Eric, what about you? Any specific use cases or case studies you wanted to call out?
Yeah, so from our perspective, one of the things that has recently been made public is a win at UPS, their smart package, smart facility implementation, and Zebra was involved in that, and we had a great win there. Our account team did a great job working with the team at UPS to ensure that misloads on package cars were minimized. And UPS, every time they have a misload, drivers either have to meet up or they have to return to the depot at night and switch the package, and it has to go out the next day, and you incur customer satisfaction issues at that point. So having a handheld on site in the facility before the truck goes out, or the package car goes out, is a really easy way to ensure that the products are loaded on the right truck. And UPS is tagging almost every inbound package now, and using the RFID on the outbound for scans. But making sure products or trucks are loaded properly doesn't just apply to UPS. It applies to nearly any vehicle that's going out for a service. So it could be that you've got an ambulance, operator that needs to ensure that the products on the ambulance are, that the ambulance is fully stocked so that it can service emergencies the proper way. Or if it's a fire truck, making sure the right hoses and equipment is on the truck. So, vehicle use cases are going up and up as well. And we're seeing tremendous interest in those types of use cases.
Awesome. Steve, your thoughts?
Yeah, I'll just camp on a couple of things. So yeah, dock door validation, huge. Staging area validation, as right before, do we have the right product picked? Is it organized correctly? And then warehouse storage areas. And so these are open areas. And the key thing there is, now there's technology like the ATR 7000 from Zebra, which is an overhead reader. It's got hundreds of steerable beams. And it's a technology that allows us to get XY coordinate accuracies using passive tags. That's excellent for these open areas where I want to know exactly where my pallet is. I want to know even item level, what's on that pallet, and I want to be able to get a coordinate within 2 to 3 feet accuracy. Also on a retail side, just a couple of things there. The main thing there is real-time visibility. Obviously, we've talked about retail pushing back through the supply chain. Now it's supply chain visibility, but inventory accuracy is still huge in retail. Out of stock items is still the #1 reason for loss of sale. Customer experience and that satisfaction, enhancing that, is also a huge aspect now in retail. So if you know where your products are, and you may know where your customer is, you can match them up. Obviously, you can make recommendations. When somebody comes, the product is there. Linking that system of accuracy up with your website commerce so that when somebody sees your website, it's got accurate information. And then a use case, really, if you see shoes or other items that are on the wall as examples to buy, using RFID to make sure that those items are constantly put back in the right place so that new customers will see those items and then obviously have an opportunity to purchase.
Yeah, good stuff.
Yeah.
One question I have is, so I get it, we've talked about warehouse, which is manufacturing, T&L, things of that nature. Retail, obviously, good one. What about hospitality? Are you guys seeing any use cases in hospitality yet? Like, the food being delivered from the distribution center to the restaurant, or are we just not there yet with there's still cost of barrier or the barrier to entry is still on the cost side of the tag and stuff like that? Are you seeing any use cases in hospitality?
Yeah, we are.
Okay.
So whether it's Chipotle with their infamous, with a famous deal, rolling out RFID in the supply chain all the way down to the store level, or McDonald's that wants to keep track of fresh ground beef going out the door throughout their supply chain, we are definitely seeing QSRs trying to take advantage of the FSMA requirements that are pending. Yeah.
Thank you, Eric, for tapping on the FSMA.
Yep,
That's exactly where I wanted you to go. I mean, right, there's some regulation happening out there, and RFID is such a good technology to start to enable this. When you got to track something, from end to end type of, what better way? But anyway,
you're solving your accountability problems and a lot of that government regulation everyone's concerned about.
That's right.
Did anyone else have anything else on the retail side? I know we have the slide up here, just the warehouse one, but did anyone have another use case for the retail they wanted to share at all?
Yeah, I think I kind of missed out on the retail portion of the question, so maybe I'll go. I think I mentioned this up front. Directionality, to be able to understand what's going from the back of the store to the front of the store and out the front of the store, from the front of the store to the parking lot, is really where we see retailers, focusing their efforts and their attention with RFID. They've already solved the, what do I have in my store, what came into my store, but now how do I find out, where is it in the store so I can service the customers better, or how do I understand what's gone out the store, either to, help with theft and loss prevention, loss detection, and also understand what's being paid for and going out the door versus what is just walking out the door and bypassing the point of sale.
Good stuff. Archit, what about you? Do you have anything else on the retail side, Dad?
Yeah, I definitely want to echo what Eric was saying, right? I think a lot of retailers have found the value in terms of being able to understand what's sitting on the shelf. But one area that we're seeing a huge win on right now is this phenomenon known as prescriptive analytics, right? What we're seeing is that if you are a retailer, now that you know what you have and what you don't have, it's about giving your associates, giving your team members prescriptive analytics in terms of what they can do to better run their operations. So whether that be, we know that we don't have these products in stock, please go to the back room and replenish it. Or we know that we're seeing a large number of folks trying on, a specific type of product, but it's not going to the point of sale and being checked out and actually being bought. Why is that happening, right? What are those reasons behind that? So it's not only in stores, but it's going back to teams that are doing purchasing, teams that are making decisions, what products are being merchandised. So there's a lot of data that can be collected right now. And I think that's where the next phase, at least in the retail world, that we're going to start seeing focus on, right? Loss prevention, right? What type of products are we seeing that are going out the door? What can be better done to accommodate for some of those areas? And so I think with the collection of this data, that's the next phase for retailers, tightening up their supply chain so they can do better forecasting in terms of demands. So now they know how often products are going out the door. They know exactly which ones are going out the door, being able to follow a better model in terms of having the right products in the stores, having the right products in the stores to even act as a, for BOPIS. So that way, if they see demands go up for people wanting to buy online and pick up in store, having their retail storefronts even serve as almost a pseudo distribution center, and being able to ship out directly from store to consumers. So there's a lot of use cases that can be unlocked, right, as a retailer, but RFID is serving as kind of that data collection tool for it. And now with the combination of analytics, the combination of being able to use artificial intelligence, AI, even just a general connectivity as a whole, of being able to take advantage of this data. We're seeing, that's where we're seeing a lot of folks now trying to figure that out. And we're definitely working with a lot of folks on that mission. Now that folks have been collecting data for a couple of years now, they could go back and use that data for something that's a little bit more useful.
Yeah, there was the ding, ding, ding AI mentioned there that caught my attention, because whenever people talk about AI, and we've had plenty of guests on lately talking about it, they always talk about, hey, it's only as good as the data you're collecting and what you're going to do with that data. And you want to talk about a great way to collect some data. RFID is a perfect way to do that and to get what you need, that potentially an AI system as well could help you analyze and figure out and figure out ways to elevate your business a little bit further there. So, all right, hey, this has been really good stuff. Do you have anything else to add on here before we move on?
Well, no, just on the retail space, I love where Archit was going, because it's so true. Those that are winning in retail, you can't walk away from the e-commerce part, right? So, I harken back to the use case of my daughter who's working in a retail. I'll call it's a national brand, but she was doing RFID reads in store, and that information was then used because they're doing in-store fulfillment. Exactly what Archit just said. Well, there's no way, and they were doing pressure tests and making sure that store could ship out for the entire region and stuff like that. Well, there's no way you can accomplish that without RFID reads, happening in real time at the end of the night, at the end of a shift. I mean, you can't do that with clipboard. It'd be really hard to do it with barcodes. So, I mean, this is where, the industry's going. It's to Steve's original point early on. It's all about visibility in the supply chain. What do we have in the store, in this case, right now? It's critical.
I agree.
So anyway.
All right. Well, hey, we're going to open this up to questions from our audience. If you haven't already done so, please open up the questions tab of your GoToWebinar dashboard and type those in there, and I'll be happy to relay those. While we're doing that, though, or while you're working on that, hey, you're subscribed to the TEConnect podcast, right? I mean, you've listened to this, right? And you've heard us bantering back and forth. You've heard our very smart guests. This is pretty much what most episodes are like. It's me and Dean doing a little bit of fun stuff. Brilliant guests talking about everything going on in our industry, from RFID, AI, retail, warehousing, inventory management, you name it. We've had episodes about it. We've got plenty of great stuff coming up too. So if you are interested in checking out the podcast, again, you can find us on YouTube, on BlueStar's YouTube page. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Podbean, anywhere that you get podcasts. Please give us a subscribe, listen to some episodes. And more importantly, if you are interested in these topics and you want to, hear about certain stuff on our show, or maybe you want future live stream webinars like this with panels of experts, it's only as good as you telling us what you want to hear about. So send in your ideas to us. Let us know what you want to hear about on the show, what you'd like us to do webinars about, kind of experts you'd like us to bring on. We'll be happy to put that stuff together for you. You can always find us at any time. Reach out to us on BlueStar's Facebook page, YouTube, our LinkedIn page. You can also email us directly at any time, TEConnect@BlueStarInc.com. All right, let's get into some questions here. I've got a few that have already come in. Steve, the first one here is actually directed directly at you. It was a follow-up to something you mentioned earlier. You said something like, don't just read it, measure it. Can you explain a little bit more of what that means in more detail?
Right. So whenever you do an RFID project, you should understand what your key performance indicators are going to be in terms of efficiency and accuracy, even customer experience. So you want to be able to understand and then measure what those increases are after you implement RFID. So get your key performance indicators understood, know how you're going to measure them. Are you going to do surveys? Are you going to take data? There's a lot of different methods, but you don't just want to implement RFID without understanding through data and facts how successful it is and what value it's returning, and did you really get the ROI that you expected?
Okay,
there you go.
There you go.
Yeah.
All right, next question I've got here. What tools are available to fine-tune RFID reader sensitivity? The example being readers missing some tags or readers reading tags that are beyond the desired range. Who wants to take that one on, fine-tuning RFID readers?
I can address it. I know Eric could and Archit could too, but we call that tuning. And effectively what you've got to do, and a lot of times we do this, is we'll do an on-site feasibility test. We want to understand the environment. We want to understand how effectively we're able to read, especially if we're reading hard items to read. Could be blockages, could be packaging, a lot of metal, could be even liquids. And so in those cases, certainly you want to understand what the profile of those materials are. I think that's probably the the best approach.
Eric, Archit, anything you wanted to add on the fine tuning and what kind of tools you can use there?
Yeah, I mean, from an RF perspective, I think tools like spectrum analyzers, power mappers can be somewhat useful. I do agree with Steve that knowing the types of materials in the environment or the other RF in the environment is very critical as well. We've seen interference from things that you would never really even think of, like RF controlled cranes become problems in an RF install. So just kind of understand what types of RF are in the environment can also be useful, and tools surrounding that type of nature.
This is Steve. Let me expand a little bit about why you need to test in a certain environment. So RF's going to bounce off concrete. It's going to bounce off the adjacent metals. It's going to be absorbed by some materials. You can't see RF energy. Sometimes these waves reflect and they cancel each other. Sometimes they actually add on to each other. So you're going to have within a read zone areas that are really good reads, and you could have null points. And it's specifically related to that environment. So that's why we like to do a test in a specific environment use case to ensure that we understand all these reflections And then we look at different reader modes. We look at the transition rate between the tag and the actual reader. We look at the amount of time that an antenna is really focused. We can obviously run through the antenna sequence to get more accuracy. And then we play with power attenuation. So there's a lot of techniques that we have for tuning, but you got to do it in the environment.
I like it. Let's see. Next question I've got here. What is the biggest challenge you see when implementing an RFID solution in a new environment?
I can take that one. I think obviously we just heard some answers regarding how why environment is important for RFID, right? So you can definitely just copy paste that on there. But one thing I would say is related to just deploying RFID in a new environment and just trying to look forward in terms of what can go wrong. One important thing to always keep into consideration is looking at what materials in the environment can have an impact that can disrupt like the technology itself. So anytime you have any changes in a specific environment, metals reflect RFID, liquids absorb RFID. So you want to make sure that you kind of keep an eye out for those specific two types of materials whenever you're looking at a new environment for RFID. And the second thing that I would say is just that education and expectation settings, right? Those are things that are not physical in nature, but they're more of a process-oriented approach that you have to take to any RFID project, because whenever you're talking with the customer, it's important for them to understand, what the value prop of RFID is. Set that expectation, set the expectations of what the limitations are too. I think everyone does a really good job about talking about the benefits, right? But whenever you're having that conversation with a customer, it's not easy, but you need to have that conversation to understand what can go wrong, right? What are the things that you need to be on the lookout for? What are the areas that you should be aware of where RFID doesn't work well? And there are some things, right? So we have to make sure that as an industry, we have those difficult conversations, because success breeds success, right? Eric mentioned the UPS use case. UPS is being super vocal about the benefits that they're getting. And trust me, when an organization like UPS is actively saying that, the customers at UPS are going to listen. Other competitors are going to listen. It's a kind of a ecosystem in itself. So as an industry, we need to really do that expectation setting of making sure that people understand what's possible, what's not possible, and educate the customer, right? The sales process of an RFID solution is technical. It is also an educational process of teaching the customer what to look out for, what to kind of keep into consideration, the steps that are involved, and it's time consuming for sure. But if you do it correctly, it's going to lead to benefits not only for yourself, for your customers, but their customers. And it's just going to, continue to be a cascading effect. And for someone who's been in the industry for over a decade, I can tell you that it's definitely one where word of mouth is going to spread very actively for you if you're able to get the attention of your customers and have them see the benefits.
Yep.
I like it. That was a great answer. Let's see. I don't have any other questions coming from the audience right now, but there was a topic that someone put in the registration when they applied to jump in on this that I thought maybe someone might want to answer, which is, which tag formats do you feel are likely to dominate the market coming up? They mentioned EPC, et cetera. Anybody have any particular thoughts or feelings on that?
Well, this is Steve, and I'll just say that to me, the first thing that I look at is obviously what's the form. So there's an inlay with a chip and an antenna construct. So you want to make sure you're picking a chip that's very sensitive and will react well. Also to the tag and its chip, and the antenna construct can be tuned for certain materials. And that's also something that we look at as well in the environment. If that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, from my perspective, I see EPC as the golden standard. Typically, it's in retail an SG tin that's encoded in the serialized G tin that's encoded into the EPC data. GS1's really kind of dominated the market there, so I see that as the path forward.
Yeah, I think GS1 and the RAIN standard are obviously providing a lot of companies with that assurance that their tags are unique, that they're able to communicate across the supply chain without system integration. Obviously, if you've got materials where it's short life, then you're going to look at some kind of a a label if you can, if it's accepted to the material. If it's something that's going to be more of a permanent, then you're going to look at a hard format. So really pick your inlay and then decide what, so to speak, form factor the tag really needs to be in. And then as Eric was saying, encoding the tag with right information, either according to GS1 or your own internal encoding schema is important as well.
Okay.
Cool.
Got one last question from a listener or viewer here. What's an example of a use case for RFID and LPR?
That's a good question.
No, so I guess maybe nobody has one. If so, that's fine. That's something we can maybe reach out after the fact and explore. So, okay, well, we'll put that one on hold. We'll say that's a, find out more later on.
Well, this is
out.
Steve. I'll just say, license plate recognition is generally, we look at a tag and we look at it in two ways with regard to retail and product. One, what's the UPC? In other words, what kind of product is it? And, obviously a lot of products have the same UPC. And then you have the instance of a UPC, which is the EPC. And that's really the license plate aspect.
Mm-hmm.
So both are important depending upon how you want to look at things and how you want to roll them up. So obviously, that's probably the best answer I can give.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Did have one more quick question come in here. What is your advice in overcoming customers' privacy concerns, especially with tracking people or sensitive items? For instance, RFID tags in passports, credit cards, personal items that can be scanned by unauthorized individuals and compromising personal data. It's a good one.
So for me, it starts with not putting personal data on an RFID tag. We see a lot of people wanting to put as much information as they can on an RFID tag, and it's really not just best practices to do that. To Steve's point, that and the last question about license plates, the tag is just that. It's a license plate. Your license plate on your car doesn't tell you your name, your social security number, your address, your telephone number. It's just a randomized character string that tells you that this car is associated with this plate. So putting the tag and putting it out there as a license plate is really the best practice, and have a secure database in the background that contains all the PII data that you want, but don't put it on a tag.
That's a good answer.
Yeah, good point. All right. I think that's all we've got right now for questions. Listen, if you're watching this after the fact and you've got a question that you didn't get to ask, or maybe some of the folks that put some ideas of what they wanted to hear about on the show when they registered, we will pass that along. Don't hesitate to reach out to us. You can, like I said, email us TEConnect@BlueStar.com. Reach out to Dwayne Roebuck. He's our RFID expert here at BlueStar. He'll be happy to help you out too. And again, I'll pass along any of those ideas that were submitted to us in the registration for our team to resolve and respond to as well.
Very
just
nice.
in case there's something that maybe needs to go down a little bit deeper of a rabbit hole than what we were able to get to here. All right, well, hey, let's wrap up since we got a little bit of time left here with what's our favorite segment on our podcast, What's TEConnecting with You?
Oh, yes.
That's where we get to talk about something in the world of technology, science, business, innovation, just something that we feel like chatting about today. So I'll just let you guys answer. Dean and I do this enough. We can skip ours today. So I'll let you guys answer what's TEConnecting with you. Archit, why don't you kick us off? What's something that's connecting with you on the tech level right now?
Just something that's hot right now. Apple launching its new WWDC, their developer conference. So we're seeing kind of this continued push right now of being able to really use AI for something that's useful, right? And I think that's something that just is a repeating pattern for me, because you see AI all over the place. You go to any trade show, it's a fun activity to do. I love to walk around and just count out booths to say how many booths have AI mentioned in it, and people put AI in everything. But now I think it's really cool to see where you can actually have real life use cases being applied. For example, where you can take advantage of the data that's already being collected. I think there's a fine line right now with privacy versus being able to leverage that AI for good, especially if it's being used on your own data. So I think it's a pretty hot topic. It's a topic that I know a lot of folks are debating right now in terms of getting that level of automation. that's one that I thought is just really cool, something that's in the news, something that's, right off the press right now. And so real life use cases of trying to automate things that we do on a day-to-day basis and, plugging our own data into that process.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah, that's
Apple better not fumble this.
I know.
Right?
I
Yeah.
saw that roll out, and I'm like, I'm very heavily embedded with Apple products. I'm very curious to see how their AI rollout is going to happen, especially since they were
Yes.
kind of late to the game.
Well, they're
it
late
felt
to the
like.
game, right?
Yeah.
And they're admitted, right?
Yeah,
But they do
exactly.
it right usually. So
Yeah,
we'll see.
and they're, let's be honest, they're big on privacy and big on,
for sure.
protecting your data. So that's going to be interesting to
Part
see
of their
where
goal. Yeah.
someone acknowledged, like, hey, your phone probably knows more about you than almost anyone else in the world.
Yeah.
And now we're going to stuff some AI in there and see what happens. So I'll be interested to see how that goes. Eric, what about you? What's TEConnecting with you right now?
Yeah, well, somebody just said fumble. So as you can see behind me, I'm a pretty big sports fan.
Hey.
For me, tech in sports is huge. I love seeing what Major League Baseball is doing with automated balls and strikes. Whether it's and it's not necessarily RFID technology, but RFID technology is in sports. So whether it's our next gen players tracking solution for the NFL, or tracking what helmet or cleats or shoulder pads a player's wearing and being able to work with the NFL health and safety to tie that back to player injuries and other types of technologies in sports is it for me. I love it.
Nice.
Yeah, good stuff.
So are you a purist or are you okay with the automated strike zone going back to baseball?
Well, I don't know. Angel Hernandez kind of made me start leaning towards automated balls and strikes, but now that he's retired, maybe I'm going to go back to being a purist.
Purist, there you go.
Yeah,
right?
I'm with you. If anyone could make you want to go to that, it was good old Angel Hernandez. So.
Very true.
Steve, what about you? I'll let you wrap up here. What's TEConnecting with you?
Robotics is kind of interesting to me. It's something that there's a lot of players and there's a lot of different robots out there. They can do different functions, but just the let's say congealing of those players to the ones that are going to win out and the technologies that are really effective in terms of, are they able to put stuff high, 4 shelves high? Are they able to move large loads? Can they go up slopes? Do they do RFID reads while they're moving? They combine things. And so that whole industry and the way that it's kind of really exploded, but in terms of people wanting to use robotics, but now, obviously RFID is a trigger to say, okay, the product's here, now you can come get it, so to speak. And then when it arrives, obviously triggers something else. But I'm interested to see how that whole field's going to play out and who's going to win out.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Very intriguing what's going on in that space. No doubt about it.
Definitely. All right. Hey, that's what's TEConnecting with our panel. A big thank you to Steve, Eric, and Archit for joining us today. We appreciate having you guys on the show.
Yes.
As I mentioned, this episode will be out on the TEConnect podcast feed on June 20th. Make sure you're subscribed. In fact, tomorrow afternoon, you're going to get an email that'll have a link to our show, as well as that Zebra refresh report that you can request as well.
Nice.
Again, big thanks to Zebra for sponsoring this live stream episode. Thanks to you for attending. Until next time, folks, stay connected. TEConnect Podcast is brought to you by Elo. Dean, everyone loves a good self-service kiosk.
You got that right.
At least I do.
Yeah. Oh, yes. Now you like them? No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. Yes.
Have we not established that I'm a guy who doesn't want to speak to people most of the time? But when you put one of those kiosks outside, let's say for ticketing, fueling or charging stations,
we're taking it up a notch.
Wayfinding, vending, etc. Not just any display is going to hold up and do the job.
This is so true.
You can't just grab like the random displays you had in a grocery store and just throw it outside.
Not going to work.
The same thing.
Not going to work.
Not going to work.
Nope.
That's where Elo's outdoor open frame touchscreens come in. They are purpose built for ease of integration into an outdoor kiosk enclosure with the 90 series that offers a brilliant optically bonded weatherproof open frame monitor with edge-to-edge glass. You can mount it in landscape, portrait, upward-facing orientations. You can provide optimal flexibility for integrating into any counter, kiosk, or cabinet design. Now, to provide unmitigated performance from day to night, there's an ambient light sensor that automatically adjusts the display's brightness to optimize power consumption, extend the display's life, and enhance the viewing experience.
Hey.
Now available in 27 and 10-inch sizes, these touchscreens have built-in thermal protection, extended operating temperatures, direct sunlight readability, and are ENERGY STAR 8.0 certified. And I got it all.
Nice.
Good outdoor application there.
Absolutely.
To learn more and check out spec sheets for both size options, check the link in the show notes or contact your BlueStar ELO representative.